City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by our speaker today. The speaker here is purely for your entertainment, enjoyment, or, in most cases, education. So this Sunday's speaker, we're happy to welcome back one of our favourite speakers, Andy Barraclough, who captivated this audience with his talk on dengue fever. So much so that at the end of the presentation was asked about the next topic, and they were overwhelmingly wanted to know about the dangers of TB and the renewed fight against it, because in some places it's on the increase. So he's returning to give us a brief overview of TB, tuberculosis, and why elderly Europeans, especially Brits and Australians, should remember their school milk days, which I do actually. Got a little quart of milk every morning. And the relationship between HIV and AIDS and TB, and the role of the new diagnostic tests. So please give a warm welcome to Andy Barraclough.
Greetings, morning all. Okay, well, our talk today, TB or not TB, and by TB we're talking about tuberculosis. Okay. So our title sounds like a bad Shakespearean pun, doesn't it? Is it TB or is it not TB? In fact, Shakespeare does mention tuberculosis. It's in Macbeth when he refers to scrofula. Scrofula is the old name for tuberculosis of the lymph glands. Typically it occurs in the neck, causes ulceration and suppuration. He refers to the belief at the time that the king could cure this scrofula just by placing his seal on the patient. And if any of you remember the book and the movie Out of Africa, they were doing a similar memory of this belief by placing the letter of the king on the people who were ill in the belief that that would cure them. The point around this is, on our bad pun TB or not TB, the serious side is, for many years we were not certain if it was TB or not. And that change in diagnostic technique has brought about a revolution in the control of TB. So, not quite as literally sound as Shakespeare, but our key point for this presentation is to determine if it really is TB or not, and to understand there are different types of TB. A little bit closer, yeah, a little bit louder. Is that okay? Okay in the back? We're getting there? Yeah, okay, that side? Good, okay. So, many of the TB treatments in the past, even as recently as 15 years ago, we weren't actually certain it was TB. We were presuming it was TB. We were treating on that basis. The big change has been around the diagnostics for TB. And these transformative tools to determine if it really is TB is the big revolution which has happened. Everyone has said for years, what's holding back TB control is the ability to diagnose TB rapidly, accurately, and cost-effectively. That's the big change that's happened. I'm going to explain how it happened and why it needed to happen. First, I'm afraid I must start with my usual disclaimers. I am required to leave this to undertake good practice. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the presenter, myself, and do not necessarily represent any of the organisations or official policy with which I am associated, and I am associated with many, because over the years I have scrounged money off anyone who would give it. The material in this presentation is general background information about TB. The information is given in outline summary form and does not purport to be complete. This presentation was created for informational purposes only. It must not be considered or used as medical clinical advice or as a recommendation. Content is not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you have problems, go and see a medical practitioner. Always seek the advice of your physician or a qualified health provider on any questions regarding your medical conditions. Never disregard medical professional advice from anything you have heard in this presentation. And that's the formal part out of the way. I need to declare my interests. I have taken money off all of these people over the years to contribute towards TB research and TB treatment. Well, just a few months ago you were talking about dengue. How is this that you're doing dengue and TB together? The answer is because I work in neglected tropical diseases, NTDs, of which there were 22. Now, thankfully, we have scrounged enough money so there are only 13 that are still neglected. In 1990s, those dark and dismal days, TB was a neglected tropical disease. It was in our portfolio. A little bit later, I'm going to link how some of the work we did on dengue helped to benefit TB diagnosis. So many of the neglected tropical diseases are linked together. Thankfully, TB is no longer a neglected tropical disease. We now have billions of dollars per year funding for TB. It's graduated out of the poor box. How we did that is a separate story for another time. Today we're going to give you the good news that we did graduate out of the poor box. Acknowledgements. Most of the presentation is taken from the Stop TB program, which I'll explain. It's not my own work, it's other people's work. I contributed to it over a career of some 35 years now, but most of it is from other people. I'm not claiming this as my work. Most of the links are given to the URL on the website, and the majority of it is from Stop TB. Stop TB program is a coalition of 1,500 partner organizations around the world who are fighting TB. There's anyone from Holland? Anyone from Holland here? Yes? Okay. So this fight has been led by the Royal Dutch National Association, KNCV. They are the largest TB and leprosy organization in the world. They led the fight to form Stop TB and move that forward, and today they are still the world experts on TB. Okay, in common with many Brits, I have latent TB. I'm going to explain shortly what that means. No, I am not going to infect you, and you are not going to infect me, but I'll explain what we mean by latent TB. So I have a personal interest in TB as well as a professional interest. Okay? Because I am now virtually at the end of my career, I have tried to retire some 4 times already, I can be rather open and bold in my statements, and today I will be so again. Okay? Okay, time for your experience of TB. How many people think they've got TB? Nobody. They think we got 3. Okay. 4. Are you being treated for TB? No. But you think you might have TB? Not necessarily. Okay. How many of you are over 65 years old and drank cow's milk as a child? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 30, 40. Around 40 of you. I would expect 30% of this group to have latent TB. That's the average figure. If you drank cow's milk and you're over 65, that cow's milk was probably not from a TB screened herd and was probably not pasteurized. The result is around 30% of those people will have latent TB. Not to worry about. I'm going to explain what we mean by latent TB now. My point around this is TB is all around us. We don't have to be frightened of it. We live with it. Our bodies can fight it. We can work with it. We look at the situation in the UK. First, we look at people who get a form of TB called Mycobacteria bovis. This is TBs contracted from cows. We find that they're all old people, and they actually contracted this TB when they were young, drinking milk. We don't find any new cases. We don't find any young people with this disease. They contracted it with young, it stayed in their bodies until something happened much later in life. There's nobody under 55 in the UK we've seen these cases. That TB has been in the body all this time. Nothing will happen unless that person becomes immunocompromised. That is, that the immune system is weakened. The immune system becomes weakened, then the TB can re-emerge from all those years ago, come back into the body, and cause problems. This is the difficulty we have with TB. It can stay latent for a very long time. So nearly all the cases we see in the UK are older people, and that's generally associated with drinking milk. I don't want to be anti the milk program. The school milk program in Europe made huge differences. Before that time, rickets, vitamin D deficiency was common. Vitamin A deficiencies, calcium deficiencies were common. The milk program solved a lot of those issues. But because it was not TB tested and not pasteurized, it also brought the risk, and only a risk, of potential TB with it. Since 1960, throughout Europe, most cows' herds are TB tested and all the milk is pasteurized, so there is no longer a risk associated with that. Many of you will know, if you ever take tea in India, they would never serve you fresh milk. It would always be what they call scalded milk. It would be boiled milk. Yeah, to make sure it is safe to drink in your tea or cakes. It's not just Brits who get this. This is a case from Switzerland. A lady was given a drug to treat Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disease. The body starts attacking itself. So they used the drug to switch off the body's immune system, helped to reduce the Crohn's, but then the TB emerged from her childhood drinking milk in Switzerland. It's not just a British problem, it is throughout Europe and North America, much less the case in Australia and New Zealand. In the United States, it's estimated that 13 million people have latent TB. So what is this latent TB? The body has the ability to isolate and quarantine the TB bacteria. It locks it up. TB is still there, still in the body, but it's locked up. You don't get ill, you cannot infect anybody, unless you're doing some very strange cannibalism and eating lungs. Okay? You're not going to infect anybody else, but it's there in the body. If the immune system becomes weakened, this TB can break out of the prison and become active TB again. So active TB, now it breaks out of the prison, now you become ill, now you can infect other people with the TB. So there's latent TB and active TB. Okay? And I said around 30% of you drinking milk have probably got this latent TB in your body. So what's my point around all this? I don't want to shock or frighten anyone. For those who may have latent TB from childhood, if you haven't noticed by now, the chances are that you never will. It's going to stay there, it'll stay locked up, nothing will happen to you, there's nothing particular you need to do about it. I want to bring the message that TB is all around us. TB is ubiquitous. It's not just a disease of drug addicts or of people living in poverty and dirty surroundings. It can happen to any of us. Okay? And globally, it is estimated around, was 30%, more recent figures are now suggesting 25% of the global population have latent TB. That is, the TB is locked up inside the body. It will not infect you, it will not infect anybody else, but it is there. Right, I'll skip over the video we had. Okay, TB is very complex and the field is full of complete myths. So I will try and debunk some of those. First is that tuberculosis infection leads to disease. No, it doesn't. In 95% of cases, it will not. The body is strong. TB is an old disease, I'll talk more about later. The body has learned to fight TB. Even if you are breathing in TB bacteria, it will not infect you. The body's immune system is strong and will lock it away. Just because you're exposed to TB doesn't mean you'll contract TB. There's a very low risk of contracting TB. If anyone in this room today had active TB, there's a very low risk that any of us would contract it. We'd have to be locked up in here for more than 12 hours for there to be any level of significant risk. You can get TB from kissing. Well, even in this town, it would have to be some very strange types of kissing. No, TB is not present in the saliva. TB is transmitted by water droplets in the air. You sneeze and cough out, and you have to breathe them in. That's very difficult to do, to cough and breathe in at the same time when you're kissing. So you don't get TB from kissing, you do not get TB from saliva. There's only one kind of tuberculosis. No, there are many kinds of tuberculosis. Tuberculosis primarily affects the lungs. Pulmonary tuberculosis, about 85%. You can also get tuberculosis of the lymph glands, of the bones, of the muscles. It's rare, but it does happen. The disease we talked about before, scrofula, is tuberculosis of the lymph glands. That used to be very common in medieval England. These days, much less so. There's different kinds of TB. There's TB from cows, there's interhuman TB, there's TB from other animals. Different strains. There's multiple drug-resistant TB, extreme drug-resistant TB, all different kinds. It's not just one kind of TB. You can only get TB once. Well, I'm afraid not. No. Around 2% of people will get TB again, because there are different kinds of TB, and there can be relapses on TB. So many of these myths abound, and it's difficult to clear them up because of the stigma associated with TB. More mythbusters. Okay, let's see if we can do more mythbusters. A few facts. People think they get TB off public transport. It's highly unlikely. You need to be exposed to TB droplets in the air for at least 8 hours to have any significant level of risk. So even if you're on the bus to Chiang Mai, on a 12-hour bus sitting next to the guy that's coughing all the time, it's unlikely that you're going to get TB. Okay? It doesn't transmit that easily. Most TB transmission is within family groups because the family is staying together all the time. You don't get much publicly transmitted TB. Genetics plays no part in TB. You're not more susceptible or less susceptible to TB because of genetic makeup. None that we've discovered so far. TB does tend to run in families, and that's because the family group spends a long time together. They eat together, they usually sleep in very adjacent close rooms, and that's how you get TB in family groups. But it's not a genetically transmitted disease. TB is an airborne disease, so it can affect anyone. If you breathe, there's a risk of TB. So rich or poor, you can contract TB. So how do you get TB? Prolonged exposure, close proximity, generally within 1 meter or less, to an infected person, a person who has active TB. Extensive exposure in dark, poorly ventilated settings, and that includes the odd patio disco, but especially prisons and institutional dormitories. Get the windows open, get the sunlight in. One of the reasons hospitals still hang sheets out to dry. In this day and age, why wouldn't they use a drying machine? Because sunlight sterilizes the sheet, it kills TB bacteria. One of the strongest ways forward. Light and ventilation will remove the risk of TB infection. But in prisons, that's often not the case. Increased risk factors are HIV, we'll talk more about that. Reduced immunity, anyone who may be taking medicines to reduce body reactions and immunity. Diabetes, heavy tobacco use, heavy alcohol use. All increase the risk factors for contracting TB. TB stigma. TB carries a very large stigma. Many reasons for that. It's often associated with drug addiction and injecting drug abuse, with poverty, with dirty conditions. But as we've said, that's not the sole way anyone can contract TB. That gives it heavy discrimination. There are major campaigns to try and stop discrimination among TB. Remember, around 15 of you have probably got TB. You can't stigmatise other people for having it when it's inside your body. The impact of this stigma is that people don't want to come for treatment. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to admit that they've got TB. For those from the USA, it's probably not a good idea to wear your Tampa Bay Devils t-shirt when you get on an aircraft. Having a big TB sign on your chest tends to panic other people. Stigma is still very real. Okay? Be aware of that. We try and break down the barriers on the stigma. Okay, on to the history lessons, origins of TB. For many years there's been a classic theory that TB transferred from animals to humans around 10,000 years ago when humans first started domesticating animals. The animals used to live very close to the humans, and the TB transferred from the cows that were being kept into the humans. More recent research shows that is not the case. Humans have had TB for many thousands of years before that, around 70,000 years ago. The latest DNA research shows that the animal theory is not correct. And that if we look at TB transmission in ancient times around the world, it followed very much the human migration routes. So humans brought TB out of Africa with them when they travelled around the world. There are lots of reports taking TB back into antiquity. It's believed that Nefertiti and Tutankhamun had TB. That's quite remarkable since they've never found Nefertiti's mummy to diagnose that she had TB, but it's said that one of the reasons why she was so beautiful and slim is because she had wasting disease from TB. Tutankhamun, they have found the mummy and they have diagnosed TB, and also in ancient Egyptian mummies as well. Point around this is TB has been associated with humans for many thousands of years. Okay. TB's been given different names over the years. We can find records from 15 to 20,000 years ago in ancient Egypt and India. Over time it's been called Pott's disease, the white plague, scrofula, all sorts of different names for it. And there is a complete cycle. Now, from the animal theory, it's believed that humans are now infecting animals. So there is a case reported of a human infecting a cow herd, and in Nepal, it's certain that the mahout, the elephant handlers, infected the elephants with TB, who subsequently died. So instead of the animals infecting the humans, it now looks like it's the humans who are infecting the animals. I am not going to talk about TB in wildlife because it's a very controversial discussion and it would take the whole 1 hour session just to discuss that. What I can say is in the UK there is TB in badgers, it's real, it's there. In South Africa there is a reservoir of TB in Cape Buffalo. In North America there is TB in red deer. There are animal populations which are reservoirs of TB. Whether culling the animals actually works is a discussion for another time. Okay, so this is the origins of TB. What's my point? Very interesting to know about Nefertiti, but what's it got to do with us? My point around this is TB is an ancient disease. It's adapted over these many thousands of years to the human body. The human body has adapted to TB. The human body has lots of defense mechanisms against TB. This is the latent TB where it locks it away. Can't eject it completely, but it locks it away so it's no threat to us. Okay? That's my point around this little history lesson. Okay. On now to what is TB, how does it spread? It's caused by a bacteria called Microbacteria tuberculosis, most commonly affects the lungs. It is curable, it is treatable. It's spread from person to person in the air through droplets, not individual bacteria. So one of the ways is to wear a mask. Doesn't need to be a very good mask. A cloth mask will do. You're not trying to stop bacteria. You're trying to stop water droplets, which are quite large. So just an ordinary cloth will act as a filter. The point is to keep it dry. If the face mask is wet, you're breathing in water droplets. It's not helping you. So dry face masks if you're in contact with active TB people. About 1/4 of the world's population are estimated to have latent TB. They're not infected, they're not ill, and they're not going to infect anybody else. But they're there with the latent TB, just like me. People infected with TB have a lifetime risk of about 10% of developing TB. Frankly, most of that risk is in the first 2 years. If you didn't develop your latent TB into active TB in the first 2 years, it's not very likely to happen now, unless you become immunocompromised. The immune system is reduced or weakened for some reason. So what is this TB? It starts with persistent coughing, chest pains, you feel very tired all the time, weight loss, and a particular indicator in Asia is night sweats. You wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with uncontrollable sweats all over nearly every night. And that adds to the fatigue that you're feeling. Latent TB, you will not feel anything. There's nothing there to worry about. It's not going to infect you, it's locked away. But those are the major symptoms of TB. If you are coughing for more than 3 weeks, you should seek medical attention. Doesn't mean it's TB, it's just an indicator it might be. One of the symptoms. Key facts for TB. TB is still one of the top 10 killers in the world. In 2016, 10 million people fell ill with TB and around 1.7 million died. 7 countries, top of the list is India. Not really fair because the population of India at 1 billion, of course, it has the most number of cases just by population size. But India is top of the list. 64% are in these 7 countries, and that's where the focus is. Thailand is not in the top 7, but we'll explain it's in the top 22. Around 1 million children ill with TB, and TB is a real killer in children, around 40% of them. HIV co-infection with TB are also around 40%, a major problem, and I'll talk more about that shortly. Okay, so what's this big problem? You look at the graph here, the line is the number of TB cases. Well, it's falling all the way down. Look at it. Yeah? TB is not a problem, it's going away. The columns are the funding for TB. So we see here in the 60s and 70s, suddenly public health programs got cut. There was virtually no funding for around 10 years for TB. The result of that was a contribution to, in the 90s, now we see a rise in TB. When you cut public health funding, you don't see the effects for typically a decade. Doesn't bounce back next year. When that funding was cut, 10 years later, now we get a rise in the TB cases. Now the funding has to go right through the roof to reverse the trend and get TB on the way down again. It wasn't just the money, but that was one of the contributing factors. When you cut public health programs, the results are inevitable. We're going to see the disease re-emerge. Spending was very low, producing reductions, but when you cut even that low spending, then it will bounce back and cause a massive problem. If we look over the longer term, yes, TB is on the decline for many years. Little blip for World War I, little blip for World War II. Then with the introduction of post-war antibiotics, it really went down with a bang. So TB is on the way out. Don't need to worry about anything there. Yeah? Unfortunately, not. Suddenly in the 90s, This is data from Kenya. TB was moving down slowly, suddenly, bang. TB is at levels we've not seen for 20 years. Right through the roof. Not just Kenya, it was across the world. Here in Thailand, a little bit difficult to see, but if you can just see the grey line with the blue splashes is Thailand. So in the early 90s, TB's on the way down till we get to 98. Then suddenly, bang, TB is on the rise. Again, back to levels we'd not seen for 10 years ago. Thailand responded rather quickly to the TB epidemic and it leveled off. And it's now reducing. You can see other countries, not so good. They went right through the roof, they didn't respond quickly. Thailand has a good surveillance program and followed through well. By 2001, Thailand had really got a grip on the TB epidemic and they were starting to stabilize it. Not immediately fall, that took a lot longer, but at least they stopped the rise in the TB. TB in Thailand. Thailand is in the top 22 countries for TB. Population is around 70 million now. About 100,000 new cases per year. There are some residual cases, so around 130,000 in total, and around 16% of those are also HIV positive. It's a very low rate, it's only about 0.1% of the population. So TB is not a big problem in Thailand, but it's still in towards the top 20 there on other countries. So we do need to be aware of TB in Thailand. TB is not evenly distributed in Thailand. You can see the dark red areas, it's predominantly in the poorer areas of the country and along the border areas. Okay. Little dark red area for Bangkok, and a little dark red area for us down in Pattaya. Okay. Okay. So it's not even, the majority of it is located there. Thailand has a major program for TB. They spend around $32 million per year, the Ministry of Health, on TB control. That's very enlightened. Very few countries approach that spending level for TB. Thailand is committed to turning that around. And here, they estimate around 12,000 deaths per year from TB. Okay. Just a minute, you told us TB is curable. How is it we've got 12,000 deaths if TB is curable? And Thailand's got a good program, and all the medicines are provided free of charge for TB. Because you have to take medicine. If you don't take the medicine, you don't get killed. And you have to take the medicine for a long time. Typically 6 to 8 months for first-line TB. If you stop taking the medicine, you end up a little bit dead. It wasn't immediately obvious what the cause of this rise was, but by the late 90s it became clear. One of the contributing factors was HIV. This really went together with TB. In fact, one of the reasons there was denial of HIV for a long time is because people said there's no such thing as HIV. The person's dying of TB. There's always been TB. Nothing to do with HIV. What we've got is a new TB epidemic. And for a long time, people were in denial about HIV. Because in the early days, the majority of HIV-positive patients died of TB. So they were saying, no such thing as HIV, it's a myth, it's invented. That was rapidly dispelled. Unfortunately, there are still some people who still advocate that way because of the link between HIV and TB. And let's just explain what that link is. Basically, when HIV infects a person, it reduces the immune system of the body. The immune system is wiped out. HIV attacks the whole T4 killer cells in your body, reduces the whole of the immune system. So if you've got latent TB in your body, it's locked up. But I've just killed all the guards with the HIV. The bars have come down. Now the latent TB can break out. And it breaks out and becomes active TB. This is the immunocompromised position. Okay? So generally we reckon the risk of progressing from latent TB So active TB over a lifetime was around 10%. With HIV, it was around 10% a year. So it became very much so that HIV and TB were associated together. If you had HIV, there was a much increased risk of developing TB. And these are figures from Thailand. You can see the co-infection rate between HIV and TB on the bottom line. On the top line is for the north of the country. Remember we said TB is not evenly distributed throughout the country. In northern Thailand, around half of the HIV patients had TB. Because they reduced the immune system, the TB came out immediately. Average for the country was only around 15%. But it was able to become an epidemic because of the latent TB in the body. You didn't have to reinfect them, they were already infected with TB. All you had to do was break down the prison gates and let the TB out. Okay, how does this affect me? I don't have HIV, so I don't have anything to worry about on the TB. Well, not quite. The impact of the HIV is that there are now a lot more people walking around with TB than there used to be. There's more people there, so there's a greater chance of infection, but not much. However, once HIV patients are receiving antiretroviral therapy, the immune system is restored. Further, it's normal that we give HIV patients prophylactic drugs against TB. So one of the ways we treat TB, one of the ways we reduce TB, is to treat HIV. If you treat the HIV, the immune system is restored, the patient no longer has TB, and is no longer at risk of TB. So there's a very close link between HIV programs and TB programs. If you go to the TB clinic, you'll be asked to take an HIV test. If you go to the HIV clinic, you'll be asked to take a TB test, because the two are interlinked. They have the impact on each other. So this TB pandemic was years in the making. And it was really a triple whammy. In the 1990s, all the funding for public health TB programs had been cut. They were in the dark ages. And it was dark ages. The diagnostics that we were using were from the 19th century. They were invented in 1894. We were still using the same diagnostic techniques for TB. The medicines were from the 1950s. We had no new TB medicine for 50 years. The vaccines were low efficiency. Need to explain that. The vaccines were really formulated for adolescents from around 13 years old onwards. They're quite effective for adolescents. They were not very good for children, and they're not very good for adults. But it does give protection throughout the adolescent years. So don't neglect the vaccination programs. But they're probably not for you. Patient treatment compliance was poor. The TB treatment for first-line TB is 6 to 8 months. You've got to take 4 tablets 3 times a day for 6 months. Okay? But after 2 months, you start to feel better. Oh, I'm not going to carry on taking them every day. They don't make me feel good. No? I can't have a drink. I can't have alcohol when I'm taking these tablets. So I'm going to stop taking them after 2 months. That was common. The logistics were cumbersome. You went to the clinic, they were out of stock. You needed 4 tablets, they only got 1 kind, or 2 kinds, not all 4 kinds together. It was a shambles. There weren't that many medical staff with knowledge of TB. In the UK, many of the general practitioners had not seen a case of TB since the 50s. The new practitioners didn't recognise TB. Looked like bronchitis. Okay? What was the boost was that there were so many ethnic Asian doctors in the UK who could recognise TB and blew the whistle very early on about the rise in TB. Financial resources were almost non-existent. The little funding that was available had been cut out completely. So the 1990s were very dark times. That's why TB was a neglected tropical disease. Just to make it worse, about the same time emerged multiple drug-resistant TB. 4 different drugs are used to treat TB. The TB had become resistant to 2 or 3 of them. It no longer worked. But we hadn't got any new drugs for TB. Not for 50 years have we had a new drug. So we've got no money, we've got a rising epidemic, and now we've got drug resistance and no drugs that work. Things were looking pretty grim. In this MDR-TB, it usually arises because the patient does not complete the course of treatment. You have to go the whole 6 to 8 months. And where KNCV, the Royal Dutch Institute, came in is because they instituted a technique called DOTS, direct observed therapy, which meant that every patient would have a minder. And the minder would make sure they took their medicine every day, on time, for the full 6 months. And that's still in operation today. Just as we were starting to get to grips with that, along came XDR-TB. Extremely drug-resistant TB, that's resistant to everything we've got. None of the drugs work. A real problem. Now they are estimated to be about 50,000 cases around the world. How did XDR-TB come about? Well, patient didn't complete the course on the first line. We put them on the second line drugs, MDR-TB drugs. They didn't complete that course either. They'd take it till they feel better and then stop. And now comes XDR-TB. If we just look at some crude numbers, for first line normal pulmonary TB, the course of treatment is between 6 to 9 months, depending on the exact type, and it costs about $30. Okay. For MDR-TB, the course of treatment is 12 to 24 months, and it costs about $1,000 to $2,000. Also requires that you take 14,600 tablets. If you stack the tablets end to end, it will be the height of the Golden Gate Bridge. So it's a lot of pills to take. It's a difficult regime. If you don't take it, you're going to end up a little bit dead. XDR-TB, 24 months, cost more than $10,000 to complete. Okay? In addition to all the tablets, you get to have 2 injections a day for 4 months. After about 2 months, there's no site on the body that's not painful for the injection. It is a traumatic time to get through. Okay, so those were the dark days, and then came a massive response. The formation of Stop TB and a really big turnaround. It was recognized this is a world problem. The Global Fund was established in Geneva, and the Global Fund brought us $4 billion per year. So we went from 1 man and a dog suddenly to $4 million. Massive turnaround to address this program. The story of how that turnaround happened is for another time, but we can just look at some of the results of it. Some of the results is the formation of this Stop TB partnership. Instead of everybody fighting, suddenly 1,500 organizations around the world agreed to all cooperate together and get this going. The main reason was because the money was coming through a global fund, and if you didn't cooperate, you didn't get the money. But cooperation came, and that worked very well. Forming the largest TB organization ever mobilized to address the issue. And it worked. So if we look at the global figures, deaths are decreasing on the right-hand side. Little bump here, the new cases are now starting to come down. Here in Thailand, here is our bump going up, and we're now declining again. TB is on the decline because of this massive effort brought around to end TB. TB HIV, there's now a low rate of infection among HIV positive people because they're all on antiretroviral therapy. The immune system has been restored. How could this come about? It came about because of the changes in diagnostics of TB. It's often said that medicine is about diagnosis, diagnosis, and diagnosis. If you can't diagnose it, you can't treat it. If you can't diagnose how well the treatment is progressing, you don't know if it's working. And if you can't diagnose it's being cured, you don't know what's happening. So diagnosis is key to the TB. However, some TB tests are better than others. Many of them were really ancient in the 90s, well out of date and not specific and not very accurate. Some of them took a long time. The TB culture test took 6 weeks before you got a result. If you had active TB come back in 6 weeks, well, perhaps around 70% of you would still be alive. You couldn't wait that long. So often we were treating TB on the presumption. You were guessing it was TB. You didn't know for sure if it was TB. Xray, okay, Xray is very seriously misunderstood. Everybody thinks Xray is the key. I can't tell you the rows we've had about Xray. Nobody on this planet can diagnose TB from an Xray. What you can say is there are indications of a chest problem which look like it could be TB. So X-rays are really good for screening programs. You may remember the old mobile X-ray unit that used to come round and do the chest X-rays. For screening, they were excellent. They could pick up, this patient has got a problem. It might be TB, it might not, but it's worth investigating more. So that's good for the X-rays. Some of you will know the Mantoux skin test. There's a big split here between Europe and North America. In North America, it's regarded very well. In Europe, it's not regarded so well. The reason for that is most Europeans will have been vaccinated against TB, whereas not so common in the USA and North America. If you've been vaccinated, you'll have the antibodies to TB in your body. You will get a reaction on the Mantoux test. Doesn't mean you've got TB, it means you've got the antibodies to TB. So it's not so useful in Europe, more useful in North America. It's very subjective, it requires a lot of training. Is this red spot positive or negative? Well, you measure it with a ruler and decide. How red is it? How big is it? It's not that great, but it's an indication. The sputum smear test was considered the gold standard. This was invented in 1894. Okay, been modified over the years, but the fundamental technique goes back to then. This involves being given a piece of no-sugar chewing gum. You chew, and you have to expectorate into a glass bottle. And we want 3 samples of you, so you've got a whole room full of people coughing and hawking into glass bottles. Okay. We then take that sputum and do a lab test. The problem with that is it worked well in the past. But for HIV positive people and for people under 16, there's often not enough bacteria in the sputum to be able to identify it. So for the modern world, not very good. We still use it, it's still got its role to play. But it can't help us with the HIV problem, which is what we had in the late 90s. So on this test, you expectorate, not saliva, we actually want the expectoration from the lungs into a glass bottle. Okay. You then go through a whole complicated process. You put it onto a glass slide, a microscope slide, you add a chemical, you then cook it, you then add 2 more chemicals, you end up with a really dirty stained sink like this, because you have to pour the chemical, you can't touch the slide, you've got to pour the chemical over the top. And then if you're really lucky, and you've done everything very well, you get a microscope slide with a series of red rods. These rods are the TB bacteria, and you can confirm the presence of TB. Okay? Now, these are very good slides, you can see the TB. This one, not so easy to see the TB on. Yeah? Is this active TB, or is it just a few red spots on the slide? And that was the best we had. So, if you decided you wanted to be a laboratory technician, a medical laboratory technician, you probably did well in science at school, you probably went to some kind of college, you didn't get to university, but you went to some kind of college, you studied for 3 years, you then did another year specialist training on TB, so that you could spend your life at the TB clinic, which in most hospitals in the region is located in the disused garden shed out in the garden, because nobody wants active TB in the hospital. And your laboratory is the disused lavatory, and you've only got that because it's the only point that's got water in the whole building. You're sitting next to a room full of people who are seriously ill, are hawking and expectorating all day long into glass bottles. You're taking this sputum, you've got no safety cabinet. You've got a mask because the nurse at the hospital likes you and has given you a face mask. You've got a pair of gloves you got off the gardener, marigold orange gloves. And all day long you're doing these slides and looking down at Microscope because somebody's life depends on your decision. Have you got red rods or not? So around this time, staff retention was a bit of a problem. It sounds like I'm exaggerating. I can take you now to Vientiane in Laos, where it is just like that, and to Cambodia, and to Indonesia, where it is still just like that. Fortunately, it is not like that in Thailand. So into this situation now, suddenly along comes Global Fund with its $14 billion, and bang, we now have an all-singing, all-dancing electronic machine which will identify TB bacteria DNA. It's called Gene Expert, produces a result in around 2 hours. We can even do it now in about 15 minutes. Not only TB, which kind of TB? Is it MDR TB? Is it XDR TB? Which particular drugs are going to be susceptible to it? Straight off. Well, just a minute, how is it you went from total destitution using slides in a disused sink to this? Because under neglected tropical diseases, we'd already done all the research to sequence the DNA. Not for TB, but for other diseases. We'd already got the diagnostic techniques. What we didn't have was the money. When the money comes, bang, we can go straight into this. However, even this would not have happened without the generosity of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Because these tests started off at around $20. Well, the old slide test cost about 35 cents. And it was just too much. Country programs just couldn't afford to pay, even for this new test. So, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation said, we will subsidize 50%. We'll give it you for half price. You can have a test for $10. And that made all the difference. That really got the program out there and moving. So now we could be sure it was TB, which kind of TB, and which medicines are going to work on it. A massive turnaround in a very short period of time. Since that time, we now have a whole pipeline coming along of new diagnostic techniques. Each one better, each one faster, each one more accurate, and each one cheaper. Over the next 5 years, we expect even better techniques than the Gene Expert that we've got. Okay. After no drugs for 50 years, we've now got a whole pipeline of drugs. Here under phase 2 clinical trials, which we're doing now, is a drug we've got great hopes for MDR-TB called bedaquiline. Seems to be turning the corner, seems to be really hitting the spot on MDR-TB. So my message is TB treatment works. Only works if you take the pills. If you don't complete the course of treatment, it doesn't work. That's the essential part. The DOTS program, whereby every patient has a minder, someone who is going to push them, make sure they take the tablets all the time, is working well. MDR-TB treatments are still a problem. Presently, only around 54% of patients get cured. The main reason is they don't complete the course of treatment. We're looking at better ways to do that, shorter courses of treatment, and bedaquiline now offers a course of treatment around 6 months instead of 2 years. We're hoping that's going to really turn the corner for us on MDR-TB. Okay, nearly done. What can you do to avoid TB? Stay healthy. Your immune system is strong, you are not going to get TB. Even if you are exposed to TB, you will not contract TB. If you're using tobacco, stop. That is an increased risk factor. When I say moderate alcohol, I'm not encouraging you to drink, I'm saying moderate your alcohol intake. Not go out and have a drink, okay? Stay out of prolonged exposure to dark, dank, crowded poorly ventilated locations. The average patio disco would be one of those. If you've got persistent coughing, seek medical attention and get tested. For those with latent TB, I don't think there's anything you need to do unless the immune system becomes compromised. Okay, I've talked for more than an hour. I'll stop and open for questions if you